When different art forms fuse and coalesce just the right way, you get Bloodborne, the perfect blend of storytelling and blood-drenching, invigorating combat, dripping with a Lovecraftian theme. Bloodborne is a Sony exclusive. It launched more than 5 years ago at this point. I decided to revisit Yharnam and its denizens, and all I can say is that it aged like fine wine. I'm going to share with you why it's worth revisiting this masterpiece. For the people who haven't played this game, you are so damn lucky. If there is a way for me to erase my memory of ever playing this game for the first time, I'll do it without hesitation. The first hunt is like no other. A dreamy experience, intoxicating yet tranquil. It's one of the most engrossing experiences I ever had, and I recommend you jump into it ASAP Rocky. Now is the perfect time to put your hunter's hat on and start hunting for the eldritch truth. The most obvious reason to explore this Lovecraftian world is that now it's for free on the PlayStation 5. That is if you're subscribed to PlayStation Plus. And if you haven't gotten the PlayStation 5 just yet, like many people, you can buy it for around $10 on the PlayStation 4 as it's on a discount at the moment. I wanted to test Bloodborne on the PlayStation 5. I wanted to see if there's any new updates. Unfortunately, and that's a big unfortunately, there aren't any. I think that's very ill-fated, as this game really deserves a proper update, as it has many optimization issues. I hope they update it someday, just like they updated their other games, Dark Souls 3 and Sekiro. There is one difference though. The loading screens are shorter than the PlayStation 4 version. It's not substantial enough. It's nothing compared to Demon Souls, where loading screens are instantaneous. So I started playing the game again, taking it for a test drive, if you will. I did not even transfer any of my save files, as I thought it'll be a short session, and oh boy, I was wrong. I couldn't stop playing. I just couldn't. And I'm a guy who played this game so much, it was more of an obsession than just a hobby, so naturally you'd think I'll be burned out to the point of no return, and I thought so myself. Apparently, the charm this game exudes is addictive and doesn't discriminate when it comes to grabbing your attention. That's why I ended up playing it for a couple of days, and I still have way more to go. The first thing that caught me off guard, and is one of the reasons I highly recommend you revisit this game, is multiplayer activity. Bloodborne's multiplayer is convoluted. The rules for initiating online play is not obvious at first, and there are some aspects that you will never ever discover unless you research it online or have gained eyes in the inside. Like how different covenants interact with one another, for example. Let's say you want to help another player beat a boss, regardless if your intentions is making more money or just being a selfless, friendly player. You ring the small bell of beckoning, the item that initiates co-op. You sit through the loading screen, knowing exactly what to expect. You get there, ready to partake in a boss gangbang, only to discover that the player that you're supposed to help is blood-drunkenly charging at you at full force. This player is now your adversary. The dream of a gangbangly hunt shatters before your eyes. You have already co-opted many times before, and you have never seen this interaction. Welcome to the world of Bloodborne. The very obscure reason this happens is because you're with the Vile Blood faction, and the other player is with the Executioners faction. Two sworn enemy groups. These unexpected interactions are so exhilarating, and once you unearth the history of the land, you discover the hatred these two factions harbor to one another. It adds a lot to the role-playing experience, as it stays organically true to its story through its mechanics without ever informing you so. There are other unique interactions as well, like the super misunderstood Hunter of Hunters faction. These interactions can initiate PvP combat in areas where it's prohibited. giving you a setting to fight in that is only experienced through these rare occasions. The rules that the game follows to initiate co-op or PvP are so damn restrictive. Following in the footsteps of Demon's Souls, the previous PlayStation exclusive, there are many prerequisites that must be met for these interactions to occur. That's why after 2 or 3 years after the game launched, it became a ghost town. You can finish the game online without ever seeing another player. Now, after 5 years and beyond, with the right dose of circumstances and events unfolding simultaneously, Bloodborne is now brimming with players. This is the most populated I have ever seen it since launch. If jolly cooperation is your cup of Estus, or invading other players' worlds to spread the seeds of destruction is your forte, either way, now is the time to hop in and join the hunt. I found co-opers in about every area in the game, and it's super fast, something you rarely saw back in the day. It just shows that this game has aged very well. I even found plentiful of co-opers in false dungeons. Yeah, you heard that right, false dungeons. I'm sure a lot of you have never heard of this term. False dungeons are one of the biggest game changers that will alter how you play the game. You can experience the game now in a way that wasn't possible before. Bloodborne has a very unique feature that I have never seen in any other game. It's even unique among the Soulsborne series. That is the Chalice dungeons, or Tomb of the Gods as they are referred to by some NPCs. They are an optional part of the game, and they satiate your dungeon crawling itch. There are 2 different types of dungeons, the story dungeons and the root dungeons. The story dungeons are fixed dungeons, meaning their layouts are always the same and they have a start and an end. You'll encounter a plethora of unique bosses and enemies that are found exclusively there. You'll eventually reach the final boss, but the journey there is longer than the actual main game. It's not a tight experience as the main game though, and it's super challenging midway through. Some of the challenges are the most difficult you'll ever encounter in any of the Soulsborne games. I'm not exaggerating here. That's why a lot of people end up never experiencing this part of the game. The other type, the root dungeons, are randomly generated dungeons. That's at least what the community thought at first, as it was advertised as so. And for all intents and purposes, you'll experience them as such. You can create your own randomly generated dungeon. This dungeon will generate a code, or as it's called in game, a glyph. You can share the glyph with others, and if it's useful enough and people start playing in it frequently, the dungeon will be immortalized in the servers. If it sees little to no activity, then the dungeon gets automatically deleted from the servers. Useful dungeons can have the highest tier perks, or as they are called in game, Carol runes. You can also find the highest tier of blood gems, items that upgrade your weapons exponentially. There are countless attributes and properties to mix and match to your weapon, to enhance, and sometimes even change your playstyle. These items can only be acquired through the Chalice dungeons. You cannot acquire them in the main game. So if you want to get the best items in the game, which are kinda necessary for NG Plus and beyond, you must play through the Chalice dungeons. Depth 5 root dungeons are not accessible unless you finish the story dungeons. The real journey for the best gems begin thereafter. And since you can't reset your stats in Bloodborne, every time you do a new character to try out new builds, you need to play the dungeons again. A very long, tiresome and repetitive process. A huge time sink, and we know that not everyone has the time to go through this. This obstacle have caused a lot of people to never experience everything the game has to offer. This has all changed now, thanks to False Depth dungeons. False Depth dungeons are hacked or edited dungeons. They essentially give you a way to skip all the story dungeons. Thank Mother Cause. This is a game changer. You can get late game weapons right at the start. For example, the Shikage. This weapon can only be obtained by reaching a certain point in the game. It's almost impossible to have this weapon in the first half of the game, but now you can. Weapons in Bloodborne dictate how you'll experience the game, as they are very different from one another, so this will be a fresh experience for you. Of course, this is true to many other weapons as well. A lot of them take even more time to get than the Chikage. Now, you can get them at the start. I found a lot of enjoyment going through these Souls dungeons. They combine elements from different dungeons, giving you a fresh experience. Truly, playing through them was a blast for me. It's like having new levels to explore while grabbing items that were never possible before. I loved it. Of course, this is not the only thing these dungeons offer. Farming the best gems in Bloodborne must be the most difficult and time-consuming process in any game. Get this, there is one gem in the unedited dungeons that is beyond rare. We need to create a new word for this. Rarest. You can literally farm this gem for a lifetime and still never get a glimpse of it. This is literal in every sense of the word, as the probability for its drop is 1 in, get this, 12.75 billion. Our universe is around 13.8 billion years old. It takes around 32 years to count to 1 billion seconds. Farming billions of times is not something you can just do. Just try to wrap your mind around that. It's mind-boggling, really. Quickly out of topic, my friend became 32 years old this year. I sent him a happy 1 billion seconds. It's such a cool way to say happy birthday. Add it into your repertoire of celebratory happy birthday wishes. Just saying. Back to topic. It's unfathomable how stupendously Rarest this gem is. It might be the most difficult item to obtain in the history of gaming. If you know something that is rarer than this, please do let me know. I'm all ears. So the point here is that gem farming was so freaking time consuming. I remember spending countless hours farming certain gems. You know, different weapons and builds require different gems, therefore different locations for farming. The out-of-shape blood-tin gems, for example, took me weeks to farm in just one location, killing the same one enemy over and over and over. Gosh, sometimes I wonder if I like torturing myself. It's so enticing to try to get your hands on something that only a few bastards were able to get. The pursuit of this gem made me go mental, but I managed it in the end. Most unfortunately though, it was all in vain now. I'm shedding a tear as I'm saying this. So many countless hours I'll never get back. The fabulous news is that it's much easier to get these gems now with the edited dungeons. You don't need to torture yourself like stupid me. The out-of-shape blood-tinged gems are still super rare, around 0.25% for it to drop. That's still magnitudes easier compared to the unedited dungeon farm. There is a very similar gem though that you can get super fast now. The edited dungeons made some super rare, almost impossible to get gems possible. Actually, some of them are so easy to get now because of these unedited dungeons. You can get them early, and you can even get gems that were practically impossible to obtain before. This adds new gems to the already exhausted roster of gems. This opened up large amounts of builds that were otherwise impossible, or too difficult to obtain, or just not worthwhile. You can now have a legit rapid poison build early on. Nobody, and I mean nobody, ever bothered with this build before, but now it's accessible. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. There are many new things that I just can't fit into one video. For example, the topic of how the chalice dungeons aren't actually random requires a whole video dedicated just for it. Chalice dungeons are a peculiar chapter in the Soulsborne series. There are still numerous anomalies and surprises that needs to be shared, like the enemy that took 3 long years to find. It was just roaming in the dungeons all along, just like that. I never heard anything like this before when it comes to video games. It's so freaking cool. There are still a plethora of other cool discoveries. These discoveries took blood and mercury in order to bring them to light, because the chalice dungeons were extremely complicated to dissect. It took a subsection of the community countless hours of roaming thousands of dungeons, in addition to digging through the files in order to learn the full extent of the mysteries that laid bare in the bottomless chalice dungeons. There are a group of people out there that share a zealous pursuit in finding the eldritch truth lying within the tomb of the gods. These brothers and sisters in blood banded together to form a group of elite hunters. They call themselves the Tomb Prospectors. They have a subreddit that I will link down below, thanks to their contributors like Zully the Witch, Dr. Angry90, Tapichi15, Kaizen79, and many others for their contributions to understanding the Chalice dungeons and eventually making life easier for everyone by creating the edited Chalice dungeons. I will leave some links down below if you want to dig deep through their discoveries. I will create another video exploring the Chalice dungeons and their mysteries. In the meantime, grab your trick weapon, start hunting, just get out and kill a few beasts. You know, it's just what hunters do. If you love Soulsborne, make sure to subscribe. I'll make sure to indulge your bloodlust. May you find your worth
in the waking world.